Hi, I'm Lori Wolf. I'm with the NSRWA and the Water Smart program, and I want to welcome you to Gardening Green Expo. The expo is sponsored by the North and South Rivers Watershed Association, the Water Smart program, and Kennedy's Country Gardens. Now, before we get started, I just want to go over a few things. We'll be taking questions at the end, so if you have a question, you can type it into the chat or in the Q&A, and then I will read those at the end. And it's really windy here where I am, so if the power goes out, we will tape this another time and put it on the website. But hopefully that won't happen. So now I would like to introduce Kristen Nicholson of Blue Stem Natives, and she's going to talk about gardening for life using native plants in the landscape to support wildlife. Kristen is co-owner of Blue Stem Natives along with her partner Britt Drews. Kristen discovered her passion for native plants as a member of Wild Ones South Shore, Mass, and has dedicated her studies and career to teaching others about the incredible benefits of using native plants in the landscape. Blue Stem Natives is located in Norwell, Mass, and has an expansive offering of locally native plants designed to accommodate all from the homeowner to landscaper to town municipalities. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Lori, for having us. Let's see. There we go. Technologically challenged, I am. So, welcome to the presentation tonight, kicking off the Gardening Green Expo. Thank you so much, Lori, for all the hard work that you do to have this expo both online and in person every year. It's a fantastic event, and I strongly recommend everyone to both go to the event on Saturday at Kennedy's and also tune in to these presentations because they are phenomenal. This week we have some amazing information coming our way. So hopefully I can start us off on a strong foot. My goal tonight is to talk about what native plants are, give you a good overview, how we can use them in our garden to support wildlife. So keep hitting the wrong button. Sorry. This is our little slice of heaven in Norwell. Uh, we are a woman-owned native plant nursery. We carry strictly native plants, native to southeastern Mass. We're starting to expand a bit more with our options. We're trying to cover more of the coastal region, and we are expanding the number of native plants that we carry every single year. It's outrageous how many plants we can fit on this small little parcel. So we definitely recommend you come and give us a visit. We don't carry cultivars, it's all straight species, and we do grow quite a few of our plants from seed on the premises. So we like to be able to take those plants from seed all the way up to like quart size, gallon size, so you can put them in your garden knowing where they came from and how they were grown. So we have our little nursery garden center in Norwell. It's open seasonally. We're going to open a little bit early this year at the end of April instead of the beginning of May. And then we open until October. We also have a seed farm that we've been cultivating also in Norwell on conservation land. So we are trying to increase the availability of locally harvested seeds. And we do a lot of educational programming. A little bit about myself. I was a dental assistant for about 18 years until about 8 years ago when I joined Wild Ones, South Shore, Mass, with my partner, Britt. And it was then when I can't remember if I read or watched a presentation by Dr. Talamy. I think it may have been a presentation. And it was like a light bulb moment for me. It was that goosebump feeling when I know, I've been an environmentalist all my life. I really try hard to make good decisions for the environment around me. And it never felt like quite enough, right? So when I heard Dr. Talamy talk, it just all started clicking. And I understood that this is what I was meant to do. So I switched my major in college. I decided to go into biology, field science, and together with Britt, we started the nursery. So our goals today, like I said at the beginning, I really want to give you an overview on native plants, a little introduction to them if you're not familiar. If you are, it's all good. It's just a quick little chat about it, and really some tangible advice on how to prepare your garden, how to use it to perform best for wildlife, and how to maybe take plants that we are so used to seeing in our gardens or at the garden centers and better choices to swap them out for. So, making better choices with more knowledge. So, why native? Why is it such a big deal to plant native plants in your garden? So native plants, the definition is, plants that have been growing in a specific region for millennia, for a very, very extended long time. And the reason why they're such a good idea to have in your garden is because they've adapted over those many, many thousands of years, alongside the wildlife, adapted to the geology, the hydrology, the weather conditions, all of those environmental concerns. Um, they're used to. So we don't have to worry about um, the heat map changing, right? And I have a graphic to describe that a little bit more. And when we talk about wanting to serve and protect the wildlife in an area, the best way we can do that is to serve and protect the food web. And the best way to do that is to start with insects. So, talking about what plants we choose for what region. So, there's something called ecoregions that we really want to pay attention to. And this is comes from the USDA, and it's the level 3 and 4 ecoregions. This is kind of like a little bit more of a zoomed in look. You could do level one. Level one is very, very broad, temperate forest region. Level 2 is a little bit more in, but level 3 is when you start getting down into more usable information. So level 3 would be the New England ecoregions. And you can see this, to describe it, if you're looking at Massachusetts, you see this kind of lightish, sagey green color. That's roughly the area that we're talking about. So um, you want to look at depending if you're on the Cape, you might be on that Atlantic coastal pine barrens, or the northeastern coastal is typically the area that we're talking about. If you're up in the more mountainous regions or like out Worcester area, you could be up in the plains and hills or in the northeastern highlands. So all those different regions have plants with some overlap that are well suited for those spaces. And you can also see, if you go in a little deeper, you can see where the differentiation is. So you see the Boston Basin. You can go down to that southeast coast and islands. So the plants that would be growing in Nantucket are different than the ones that might be growing in Natick, just because they have such different exposures. So I'm in Foxborough at the moment. So I'm like that northeast coastal plain, that weird green color. But a lot of our customers are in the Boston Basin region. So even though we're close, there's still a differentiation between some plants. And then sometimes when I give presentations out in like the Berkshires, it's a whole different plant palette. So I always have to check and make sure I'm giving people the right advice for those. I wouldn't worry too much about going too nitty gritty with these lines. They're just lines on a map. Use them as a general um, guideline for what plants you do. The only time I would be very concerned about what plants I'm putting where and really adhering to that is if I were in a protected area like the Pine Barrens, um, or a budding conservation land, something like that. I might pay a little bit closer attention, but for the most part, just take a look at that more broad map and try to stick as close to that as you can. So you might ask, what's the difference? I know my zone is zone 6. A, B, I don't even know what I am anymore because it changed. So people are very familiar with this map and they know about growing zones, and the USDA puts this map out. And what you need to understand about the growing zones and why we don't really care about it all that much when it comes to native plants is because it describes hardiness. So it's a heat map, basically, what plants can grow and survive in an area versus what should. So you can take a look at the zone 6, which is that darker green color. It stretches all the way from Massachusetts down along the Great Plains, and then all the way up into Washington state. And so one might think that plants that are native to Washington state must be native to Massachusetts because they're in the same growing zone. And that is very, very, very not true and detrimental, to be honest. And I will give some examples of that. So moving on, and I will go through these a little bit quickly because I'm sure most of us have a good idea of what these are. The one puzzle piece that I want everyone to really understand and walk away with is that native plants are host plants. And host plants are the absolute key to having a ecologically beneficial garden. If you are interested in songbirds, you love birding in your backyard, you put up all your bird feeders and you put your face out the window and watch them and count them and keep track, which is a wonderful hobby. If you want those birds in your yard, you need bugs, you need insects, you need caterpillars, because that's what those birds are going to be feeding their young. And I have no doubt you are going to hear plenty about that from Dr. Talmy tomorrow. So the thing is, most insects require specific plants in order to raise their caterpillars on. And so one of the easiest ways to describe that is definitely going to be the monarch caterpillar. Monarch caterpillar, everyone knows they need milkweeds to subsist on. But they're just one example. So, 20 to 45% of native bees are specialists. So that means they require specific plants, specific flowers, specific flower shapes in order to get the nutrients that they need. Same with caterpillars. So they're eating specific plants. So there's a ton of plants that you need to have in your gardens in order to have a wider diversity. So understanding that these insects have very specific needs is really the key to building an ecologically sound garden. So we have this beautiful monarch butterfly, and when we see the monarch butterflies, we see them landing on all kinds of flowers. And that's because as adults, they can nectar on just about anything. They're not picky. They don't have really specific needs as far as their nectar needs are. They're using the nectar as an energy source, as they should, but they can get that energy source from a wide variety of flowers. What they do need is the milkweed plants that are native to specific areas in order to raise their caterpillars. And I do say that it's important to choose the milkweed plants specifically to your area, because they also have they use the plants kind of as a map, essentially a little GPS. So if you're trying to grow plants like the tropical milkweed up here in the north, I don't know how much success you'll have because it's definitely a tropical plant. Um, it will serve to it'll almost work to confuse them, because that's the plant they expect to see down in Mexico. So we don't want to disrupt that migration service. And you also have to think that monarch butterflies, nature's just so much better than we are at all of this stuff. So if the plants that are native up here are the ones they're using at any particular time, we want to continue to facilitate that. So down south, they have other milkweeds that they plant, and that's going to help facilitate that migration period. So this is one example of when I was talking about plants that are native to Washington State versus Massachusetts. We have wild lupin, which is Lupinus perennis, and that is native to the East Coast of the United States. And so again, that zone six, we don't care about that zone six. We care about what plants are native where. So the lupin that grows on the West Coast, and it's absolutely beautiful, is Lupinus polyphyllus, which is giant and beautiful and vibrant. But it also very easily hybridizes our wild lupin on the East Coast. So a lot of people plant it over here. It's pretty much the only lupin that you'll find in those wild seed mixes because it grows pretty prolifically. And our wild lupin is a bit fussy. So the problem with that happening is that this adorable little blue butterfly, which is the Carner blue butterfly, is a specialist on the wild lupin, Lupinus perennis, much like monarch caterpillars are specialists on Asclepias plants. So once our wild lupin plants are hybridized or taken over by the Lupinus polyphyllus, the Carner blue butterfly no longer can get any sustenance from those plants. So they are functionally extinct. They can only be found in a couple of very small patches in the wild. So it's a good example as to why a plant could be native to North America, native to the United States of America, but doesn't necessarily make it native to your space. So it's just a good example of how to understand the cost of planting things for our. There's another one. The tree of heaven was brought over in the 1700s as a specimen plant. This is also the tree that was discussed about in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So it's been around for a while. It's a beautiful plant, smells a little funny, grows really, really quickly, and it is also the preferred host plant to the spotted lanternfly. So you're going to start seeing these very soon and in a lot bigger numbers in Massachusetts. My daughter lives in Philadelphia, and they get inundated. Like it's gross, honestly, how many of them fly around. They are gorgeous insects, but they just really take over. So what we really need to do is try to slow this down. So identifying and cutting down any trees, a tree of heaven that you have. If you do see the spotted lanternfly, the nymphs, or the egg masses, you want to take a photo of it, destroy any of them, and then send that report over to that link on the bottom, just so that they can try and keep track, and maybe we can try and get a little bit of a head start on these. So why these guys are so destructive, and you might think, okay, their host plant is tree of heaven, so they'll just eat that and leave the rest of the plants alone. Well, they also prefer grape, apple. So if you're a wine lover, you might want to be a little more concerned about that. So they could have a really detrimental effect on our agricultural clock as well. So going back to why planting native is so important, they're going to provide food, nectar, and habitat for birds, butterflies, and other wildlife. We talked about that missing puzzle piece about host plant and why that's so important. It's going to save water and reduce soil runoff and erosion. Even with all the snow and the insane rain that we have today, we are still in a drought in Massachusetts. I know that feels really difficult to believe, but I think we're going to have quite a problematic summer. So it's in our best interest to kind of try and get ahead of that. We're going to reduce the time, energy, and pollution of mowing and the work, which is always wonderful. Adding beauty to our environment. There's no therapy quite like soil therapy. And we want to bring back the bugs, which is my favorite part. So, absolutely, we want the bugs. One of the points I like to bring up is, people are like, do we really want more bugs? You see all of these um, advertisements for, yard spraying and insect repellent and all these things and the diseases that they could carry with them as well as not to be overlooked. Um, but do you remember, going for really long road trips with your family when you were younger? And, dad would have to pull over and get gas or whatever and scrub the windshield, right? When's the last time you really had to do that? It's become so rare that when it does happen, it's almost startling. Um, so that should be a real wake up call for how few insects are really in our area, and we need them. They are the basis of the food web. Everything eats them. Hummingbirds. We think of hummingbirds as needing nectar, but they only receive about 10% of their nutritional needs from nectar. 90% of that is from flying insects. So if we're spraying our yards for all the mosquitoes and the gnats and everything for our own benefit, we're removing that food source from hummingbirds and bats and all the other wildlife that we really want to encourage. So we want the bugs. So obviously there's going to be a line, right? We still have to live and enjoy our spaces, and we absolutely want to do that. So how do we create yards that support the wildlife we want to see, allow for the space to use our land, and stay safe and healthy? So it's kind of a tall order, but there's some really easy ways that we can accomplish all of those things. So first, we want to reduce our lawn space, and that's going to reduce that time, energy, and pollution of mowing. Um, I don't know many people that really enjoy mowing. I guess there's probably some guys that are like put their headphones on and they go out and do their thing for a couple hours. But really, there's more fun things that you could be doing with your Saturdays. And honestly, I don't want to hear those machines anymore. Um, we want to leave the leaves. That's definitely a popular phrase I'm sure you've been hearing over the past few years. And of course, my personal favorite is planting natives. So we want to evaluate how you use your property. Make your lawn reflect your lifestyle. So if you are, hosting a lot of barbecues with the neighbors, you have dogs, little kids, pets, you have volleyball games, who knows, whatever you want to do. Um, So you want to make sure you retain that space because you want to be able to use your property. I like using lawn as a pathway. It's very inviting. It gets that mowing fascination out of the way. And you can fill in those areas with garden beds that aren't being used. This is also really helpful if you do use your yard for recreation or you have the dog and the kids and you do feel the need to spray for mosquitoes and ticks, which is completely understandable. You can be selective about those areas. You can apply to the areas with the appropriate, materials, of course, just for the spaces that you're going to use. My personally in my yard, we have a fire pit area that we use, and we also have a deck underneath which is a bit moist. So we always have a mosquito problem when we're out there in the dusky areas. So what I use is a cedar oil, and I will spray underneath the deck and also around the general area of the fire pit before we're going to use it. So we're not spraying on a weekly basis, which is completely unnecessary. And I'm not spraying the trees and I'm not spraying the corners of the yard that we're not even going to. I'm only spraying the areas that we're using. So I'm trying to mitigate all of that use. So using the turf as your pathways. This little graphic is pretty funny because people are always saying, "Oh, I don't have room for more flowers." Of course you do. Like how many in your yard are you only touching to mow? Which that seems ridiculous. Like start at the corners and build up some garden beds and start shrinking that a little bit over time. Maybe your partner won't even notice if you just kind of gooch it a foot a year. and you can just keep adding it. So it's also better for our bodies too to start small, work in small sections. It's not so overwhelming. Could be like me, and I like to like go big on projects and then get three-quarters of the way through and get bored and start something else. So starting small is really good. And we also want to try to minimize the disruption. So we want to try to cut and flip the turf and plant right into it. Or you could use like a lasagna garden style to try to minimize digging into that soil as much as possible. This is one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Rainier. Think of your lawn less as wall-to-wall carpeting and more like an area rug. How often, if you even just look in the room that you're in right now, this visual works a lot better when I'm in person and we're all standing in a room. But we're sitting in a room and whole room has carpet, but we're all sitting in the middle. So we're only touching and using the middle part of that room, and the edges, tables and chairs lined up against them. So that could be our garden space. And usually when I say that, people are like, oh, yeah, they totally get it. So that's a really good way to look at things. Fill that space up. The next point is to lose the lawn. This is not as easy as we would like it to be. And a lot of it has to do with understanding your current lifestyle as well as your near future lifestyle. So if you are older and retired and you don't have, the dog running around or, constant kids playing soccer, then you might have a few more options. If you have younger kids and the dog and or you're really using that lawn a lot, but honestly stick with turf grass for that space. There's really no other plant that can really withstand getting beat up like that. You could always add some clover in there. Clover is not native here, but it's better than nothing. So you could intersperse some clover into it. Those violets, that would be a great option to intersperse in your lawn to make it just a bit more eco friendly. But if you do have spaces that don't really need to walk on all that often, you could do something like this large space, which is Carex pennsylvanica, absolutely gorgeous in large swath. It's very elegant. So it only grows about 8 to 10 inches long and kind of floops over. So in a really wide swath, it's absolutely gorgeous. It can handle sun or shade, just really depends on the moisture level that you have. And it is shallow rooted. So it's a really great option over static fields if that's an issue or concern for you. It can handle being under pine trees and everything else. So it's a really, really valuable plant. Wild strawberry is another favorite of mine. That one can go just about anywhere. You have Fragaria virginiana, and then you also have Fragaria vesca, which is woodland strawberry. Stands up a little bit more in mostly shady spots. So if you have deeper shade, that's a good one. If you have spaces that are just in the summertime, maybe alongside your driveway. This little guy next to the violets is Antenaria plantaginifolia, which is plantain pussy toes. There's actually quite a few Antenaria species, and they form this mat with these silvery green leaves. They're really, really pretty to look at, and they put up little precious white flowers in the spring. So they're wonderful. You can walk on them. They work well on a pathway and they just kind of do their thing. So there's definitely some options. Feel free to mix and match and throw things in. A lot of plants that are called ground covers tend to grow like under a foot tall. And if you do mow them rarely, you can keep them even shorter. So that can be helpful because you don't want like trip hazards or anything like that. Carex pennsylvanica, the grass like edge there. Once that grows to the 8 to 10 inches, it's not going to grow anymore. So you could just keep it like that. And if you really had to mow it, you could mow it like once a season, and it'll stay on the shorter side. It can handle moderate walking. You can walk on it without worrying about it too much, but I wouldn't play soccer on it. Leave the leaves is, I feel like this is really starting to catch on in a lot of areas. And I do always put the caveat in here that if you have oak trees, then maybe this one needs a little bit of tempering advice. I'm very lucky we have silver maples in my yard. So I don't do anything with the leaves in our backyard. It drives my dad crazy. My husband is very, very thankful. I've told him we don't need to touch the leaves in the backyard anymore. Um, so the idea of this is basically taking what Mother Nature has given us and provides us every single year and using it in our gardens. So obviously, again, we want to use it, keep our spaces safe. So removing the leaves from away from the house and on pathways and everything like that. If you have oak leaves and they're like 3 feet deep, of course, you need to kind of break those up a little bit, maybe move them around the yard. But basically, you want to do everything you do gently. A lot of people will say to me, like, oh, I run over them and I mulch them up. We don't try to avoid doing that if we can. Uh, and the reason is there's so many caterpillars that will overwinter and they'll do so in chrysalis, like there's another term for it, it's not chrysalis. Moving on. But they will do it so in the leaves, in the canopy, while the leaves are still on the tree. And then as those leaves fall, they're falling to the earth. So when we go to mow them up and mulch them up, we're actually kind of destroying those caterpillars overwintering, which is a big sad. So you can see the picture on the right there, like the Luna moth, the giant leopard moth, the swallowtail. Those are all Lepidoptera that use leaves to overwinter. We're to be the bearer of bad news, but if we can try to maybe gently rake things into place, leave them whenever we can. Uh, Try not to use the blowers as much as possible because that's like hurricane force winds blowing them around. That can cause a lot of damage too. Again, I am not saying everybody, perfection. That's not our goal. But just try to keep those sort of things in mind that, again, every action that we take has consequences. So we want to try to mitigate that as much as possible. This is a big one and it's coming up. I swear it's coming up. Everybody talks about time to clean up the garden. And there is this weird thing where everybody says, you have to wait till it's 50 degrees night for 5 days or something weird. I don't know. They just throw numbers out there and see what sticks. And the truth is, there is no set timing for when it is safe to clean up your garden. First of all, your garden is not dirty, it's not messy, it's completely normal. So, um, when you go to chop down stems and clean up all the messy parts that have been left over the winter, what you're really doing is removing habitat for overwintering insects. A lot of them use those pithy stems with the hollow insides to protect their young over the winter. So when we chop those down, we're again removing that habitat. And some people say, I can't stand looking at it. It looks terrible. It looks messy. I have HOA, they have rules. I get it. I totally get it. So there's a couple of kind of workarounds to this. You want to leave standing plant matter as much as you can. If you can't, drop, like chop the plants down and drop them right in place. Try to reduce that disturbance as much as possible. And if you can, leave the stems roughly 18 to 20 inches tall. That kind of spacing gives those little guys like a fighting chance. You know what I mean? Um, but honestly, if you can avoid it, just do it. The green is going to come up just fine. The plants are going to come up around these standing um, twigs just fine. They're going to come up through the leaf litter just fine. If you have like a thick mat of like oak leaves, they don't break down as easily. In the springtime, go in there with a stick and kind of rough it up a little bit, introduce some oxygen. It's going to break down. And then as those plants grow up, they're going to use those existing twigs as kind of a structure to keep your plant standing up. If after, the green has come up, you really want to go in there and clean up those dead stems, go for it. Put them down if you really must. but honestly, you probably won't even notice it after. So you might be thinking, yeah, like you want all these bugs, but we're going to be outside and we're going to be absolutely destroyed by them. So for building habitat that's going to encourage more insects, what about the ones that we don't really want around us? We have solutions. So this one, I'm not taking credit for it. This is Dr. Talmy all the way. His mosquito buckets are an absolutely phenomenal idea, and they really do work. They are low tech, which I love, and they're inexpensive, which is great too. Easy, and you can just put them together in an afternoon, put them out in your yard, and it's like a once a month go visit them and take care of them. So what you do with the mosquito bucket. You just look that up online. It's a 5 gallon bucket. You fill it up with some yard waste. I like to put some screening, some like hardware cloth screening over the top, just to prevent um, small animals from falling in. And then you're going to put the mosquito dunk in there. And the mosquito dunk is a wonderful option because yes, it's a pesticide. So people who don't use pesticides, it's like hands off, but it is a very selective pesticide. Um, and it only disrupts the life cycle of the mosquitoes. The way it works is you are creating an anaerobic um, murky solution that mosquitoes love. Standing water, real funky. They love that. They're going to lay their eggs in it. And the mosquito dunk it's a bacteria that is going to destroy the eggs and the larvae. The nice part about that is it does not harm dragonfly larvae. It does not harm fish. It does not harm any other creatures like that. So it's really a wonderful, I mean, if we're going to call pesticide wonderful, like that's kind of it. So it really, really helps. The key to it is placing enough of them around your yard, removing any other standing water features in your yard, and replacing the mosquito dunk roughly like once a month, give or take. So you just once a month, just run over there and throw a dunk in there. Um, so going back to that, removing standing water, really important in your yard. If you have standing water, you want to throw a mosquito dunk in there, remove it, tires, tarps, all those weird things. Mosquitoes can breed in like a teaspoon of water. It's kind of nuts, but if you see little squiggly things happening in some water, that's why. Mosquito dunks are also helpful in bird baths. If you have a bird bath that you want to use, you can put a little piece of mosquito dunk in there. You don't have to put a whole disc in it. And make sure you're cleaning those regularly if you're going to have them. Another thing I like to have is uses fans. If you have a patio or a space that you like to sit out there because mosquitoes really can't fly well in breezy conditions. That's why they only come out when it's still nights. So if you have gently blowing fans, that can really help. And what I call PRRP, which is personal responsibility of person. So using proper clothing, uh, sprays and creams on your own body, and making sure you're doing, um, just taking care of your immediate space. So, like citronella candles and tiki torches and things like that, they do have a detrimental effect on the insects around us that we really don't want. Is it the end of the world to have a little thing on your table while you're sitting out there with your friends? No, but maybe if we can avoid or reduce the amount of things that we're using, we will be better off. Tick, big one. This is, you would like to think that with all the snow that we had, that we catch a little bit of break from ticks. But the truth is, we really don't. They're around all year long. We may see fewer of them in the wintertime. But honestly, that's probably more because we're not outside in the areas that they are inhabiting. But they are there, and it is something that you should be aware of all year long. So again, we want to plan out our recreation space. The habit of so many people when you're building like a swing set for your kids is to put it in the back corner of your yard, like up against a tree line or a fence line, right? And that could very well be like the worst place to put one. Most ticks inhabit like around a 10-foot range from a wooded area. That's their happy space. So if you have your kids playing or your recreation space right up against a tree line, you're kind of in prime territory for them. Be aware of favorite tick habitat. They like tall grasses. They like cool, moist areas. Um, So if you're going for a hike in some tall grasses and it's maybe under a little bit of tree canopy, you're in primo tick territory. So make sure you're aware of that. You can use the calculated use of permethrin. Permethrin is a very potent pesticide, and it's used in a lot of things. And I do think this is another example of the PRRP, which is responsibility of your person. Treating your clothes is a great way to avoid tick bites on yourself. Make sure you're doing head to toe tick checks when you're coming in. Check your children, check your pets, head to toe. I like to keep a sticky roller in my truck. So when I come in from the field or whatnot, I just roll that over my clothes and my legs and everything, and it catches the little, even the teeny tiny little ticks that haven't had a chance to latch on yet. So that's a helpful tip too. If you're kind of worried about waiting till you get home, just run that lint roller around you. It works. Anyway, moving on to the plants, which is the best part. Again, perfection is not the goal. It's never the goal because then we go insane. This is my little um, idea of a perfect garden. It's beautiful, it's colorful, but everything is native, and not everything has to be native, and that's okay. There's big splashes of color, different heights, different textures. The pathways are curved, and it just looks really wonderful. Um, I laugh when people tell me that they don't have room for more plants. Like, you don't. Look at, you can put plants everywhere. I can still see spaces for more plants. So, and the best part about garden is you're never looking at the same garden twice, right? So go in there and you can putter around and pull things up, move things around. It's wonderful. So when we're planning our garden or even planning on enhancing our garden, we really want to make sure we're spanning the seasons with growth. We don't want just like brown and then green and then a riot of color all over the place. And then it goes back to brown again. So what we really want to do is have something blooming all the time. And even when things we don't think of blooming are very important. So trees and shrubs, super important. Early season, late season, super important. So you really want to plan your landscape with plants that are blooming across the season. And you can look at, we have charts on our website. Dr. Jagir from Becology, UMass Dartmouth, has charts very similar to this, telling when things are blooming. And it can be really helpful because sometimes I'll think, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not noticing plants. And it's like early May. What can I look at? And I'll look at our chart and I'll just run down early May and I'll see what's blooming. And I'm like, oh, that would fit. So I'll throw it in there and it works out great. Um, yeah, trees, shrubs, annuals. We do have some native annuals. They all have a really important role to play. So making sure you can cover the gamut. And if you don't think you have room for a tree, you probably have room for some shrubs. And shrubs are a really, really vital part of your garden you don't want to miss out on. Fresh water sources. I do have to laugh at this because every single one of these pictures are honeybees, and they're not really the bees we want to encourage, but whatever. The ideas were there. So, providing fresh water sources in your garden is really, really helpful to support wildlife. And I also tell people if you have a lot of problems with rabbits, yes, they absolutely are going to eat your garden up. But a lot of times, if you ever notice plants being like snipped off and dropped, it's not that they're hungry necessarily, but that they're looking for water and they're getting some water from those plants. So if you're providing some water, maybe they'll leave some of your plants alone. Worth a shot. So shallow dishes, putting in some rocks or stones and things like that so that our little insect friends have perches and go a long way. If we do end up experiencing a prolonged drought this spring and summer, like I think we might, this can be really helpful. So again, make sure it's cleaned on the regular, and you can pop these all around your garden, just really shallow dishes. Really, really helpful. So talking about pesticides, I did mention the permethrin, uh, and I just want to kind of go over a little bit of when we're talking about pesticides, it's a really broad topic. And I think it gets blown out a lot. Obviously, we want to reduce as much as possible because why use it if we don't need to or if it's causing harm? But there's a lot of greenwashing that happens with pesticides too. So neonicotinoids, that's a really popular one. Everybody knows, avoid neonics. So, talk to your garden centers. Most garden centers are going to tell you we do not use neonics. And they legally can say that because they're not using it on their property. But that doesn't mean the plants themselves haven't been exposed to them. Most typical garden centers are receiving their plants as little tiny plugs called liners, and they're putting them and potting them up into larger things to grow out and to sell to you. And those plants could have come from one or two other sources before they arrived at your garden center. And chances are pretty high, depending on the types of plants they were, that they were treated with neonics at some point in their growth. And those are systemic pesticides, meaning they are found throughout the entire plant and they do last in the plant for a few years. So it's just something to keep in mind. Neem oil is a really popular one. That is an organic material, it comes from plants. So people make that connection. Oh, it's organic, it must be safe. It comes from plants, it must be safe. And that's not always true. Is it safe for humans? Yes, it is. It's a good option if you need a pesticide for your vegetable garden because it is food safe. But when it comes to insects, it is not. It is also a systemic pesticide. And it causes, like Dr. Jagir talks about, causing neurological issues with honey, bumblebees, native bumblebees. So it's, again, one of those things. A lot of nurseries, if they use it, I shouldn't say a lot, I can't speak for other nurseries. We use it so very rarely. We don't even keep a bottle on hand. But if we did need to use it for something, we would take those plants off, isolate them, put some screening over them, use it to treat whatever the condition is, and then keep that plant off or for that space and time. But they're covered, so insects can't readily get to them. So, I mean, is it something that is safe to use? Yes and no. A permethrin is that one we talked about for the ticks, and it is safe for humans. It's really bad for some animals. So you want to make sure you're following the labels. It's not something you want to be spraying around your yard. It's not something you want to be adding to containers around your yard. Like it can cause a lot of issues. So just, take a step back when you go to reach for something to solve a problem. Take a step back and see if there's other options that you can use. Cultivars is something I brought up earlier. We don't carry cultivars at the nursery, but I think it's really important to understand them and why we try to avoid them if we can. So, a cultivar is a cultivated variety. That's how it gets its name. Generally, they're cloned. So, they're cloned asexually. So, they are genetically identical. And there's a couple of reasons why it's something we would want to consider before when we're making plant choices. Um, Cultivars have gotten a pretty gnarly rep, especially as people learn the differences about them. And I don't necessarily think that that's well deserved because there's been a lot of studies about cultivars being pretty beneficial. But there are some aspects of cultivars that we would want to avoid. just straight up avoid. So this nine bark is a really great example of that. So you'll see on the left is the common nine bark, Physocarpus opifolius, which is the straight species, right? That's grown from seed in the wild. And on the right is Physocarpus opifolius diablo. So it has that name in the single quotations. And that has copper colored leaves, burgundy colored leaves. And they are always burgundy color. They're not green like ever. So the reason why we want to avoid something like that, something where the plant's leaves have changed color, is that those leaves are not nutritionally capable of providing, of being a host plant for those insects. Right? I like to say how when we're just out walking in the woods, when do we start seeing leaves turn color? In the fall, when they're starting to go into senescence, right? When the leaves are turning color, all of the nutrients are leaving the leaves and they're going into the root systems. So insects, birds, all those animals are not seeing those leaves as being a nutrition source anymore. So if this plant is like that color all the time, it's no longer part of the food web. Same goes for flower shape and colors. So the purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea, is like the most cultivated flower in the Northeast, in the North America anyway. You can find it in every color known, and you can find different shapes like this. The double flower, triple flowers, they're beautiful, all beautiful. But the problem with this is we've changed the shape of the flower. So the insects that have specific mouth parts and they go to specific flowers because of those mouth parts, well, they can't access the nectar if there even is any, and they can't access any of those reproductive parts of the flower. So if you're planting something like this, understand that you're planting it specifically for you, for your enjoyment. But you want, you know, that's your game. Uh, just understand that you're not planting this one for the environment, just for you. So now we'll get into a couple of options for planting this, not that. We talked about tropical milkweed. Oh, I forgot to put in the botanical name for that one. So that one on the left is tropical milkweed, absolutely gorgeous plant, but it belongs in Mexico, and that's where it should be grown. We have other milkweeds that grow very well in this area. Butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa, is a lovely one. That one stays nice and short, perfect for really hot, dry, sandy locations. It can spread, so you can, if you want to reduce that spread, you can always clip those seed heads when they come up if you'd like. We also have, gosh, we have so many. We have the common milkweed. We have Asclepias incarnata, which is the rose milkweed, better for kind of more moist areas. Lots of ones. Boxwood is a gross little landscape plant everybody insists on having. Um, it really doesn't support any wildlife. It's not a host plant for anything around here, but one that we do have, if you really want an evergreen, would be the inkberry, Ilex glabra. This is a wonderful plant. So it is dioecious, so it has male and female plants. You want to have some of both. Um, can be a challenge to find this one as a straight species. And it's one of those things where if you got a cultivar, it's cultivated for size, which can be helpful. And when things are cultivated for size, that's not a terrible thing. So that's a consideration. But the Ilex glabra, when it blooms, it has teeny tiny little flowers that you don't even really notice unless you're up close to it. But you'll see that whole bush be shaken with all the bee and insect activity. It's a really great one. This one we're going to see a ton of forsythia that grows flipping everywhere. It is not native here. And people are like, oh, it's everywhere. I know it is. I challenge you the next time you are up against a forsythia bush to really look and see what kind of insects you're seeing on it. And I think you're going to see maybe some flies and not a whole heck of a lot else. Maybe a couple bees here and there, but not very many. But if you do want some early spring color, you could do spice bush, which is a wonderful, wonderful native plant. Kind of like a wooded edge area would be great. Also, edible berries, and the twigs can be steeped like a tea, which is delicious. Had some just last week, actually. And then oh, I'll keep going. Witch hazel is another great one. So there are vernal witch hazels, which bloom in early spring or late winter, and you may find some that bloom in the fall. So those are ones I think I'll be okay. And they are the host plant for the world's cutest caterpillar. So this is the spice bush swallowtail caterpillars. Those are real caterpillars. They look like Pokemon characters, but they're real. And they are the best sales mechanism because when we have spice bush and I see those leaves folded up, I know there's a spice bush caterpillar in there, and I can guarantee I show them that, and they will take that plant. Rose of Sharon is my nemesis. We have so many of these in my yard. They're a gorgeous plant, hibiscus. They're very hardy here. Hummingbirds love them, bees love them. They're lovely, beautiful plant. Make an absolute mess, and they spread like crazy. And before you say, I've had one for 20 years and it hasn't spread, you just wait because this one has been known to escape cultivation and revert for a period of time, which is super fun. Um, but we do have a native hibiscus. Unfortunately, it's not like exactly a one-to-one because a native hibiscus is a wetland plant, so it does prefer a bit more moisture. So it wouldn't grow quite in all the areas that a rose of Sharon might. But if you put this near like a downspout or in a low area of your yard that got lots, and these flowers are huge and beautiful. This is another one that gets people real upset is the butterfly bush buddleia. This plant is not invasive here yet, but I say give it some time because down south to us, I think as far as Connecticut, maybe even, it is on the invasive species list. And every single one of those little flowers that you see has like 1,000 seeds. They're like dust. And when they put off their seed, it's millions of seeds on each flower head. They'll really spread like crazy. I'm not a big proponent of taking down shrubs and trees that are plants that are well established and doing well. And it is a nice nectar source for insects. Um, but this is definitely one where, maybe if it's starting to peter out, you yoink that without any hesitation because you can really get ahead of things. And there's other shrubs that are just as beautiful. Sweet pepper bush, Clethra alnophonia, beautiful, beautiful shrub. And it smells so nice. You smell this one walking around kind of late June into July. Really, really nice. Honeysuckle, there's the honeysuckle vine, Lonicera japonica. This one does have that honeysuckle sweet scent. It's very aggressive. My gosh, it would take down your house if you let it. And it does not support wildlife. But our native honeysuckle is gorgeous. Lonicera sempervirens. The only down, I guess I'd call it a con, is that it doesn't have that honeysuckle scent. But if you're really sensitive to scents, this could be a good option for you. The nice part about it is it blooms from like May to October. It is a vine, so it has a vining habit. So I would make sure you're putting it on something very sturdy, but it's not as aggressive as the Japanese honeysuckle. Going back to some of those ground covers, vinca, ugh, such a terrible plant. Yeah, it's cute for like a week when those little purple flowers are blooming, but it really doesn't have any good value beyond that. It's a ground cover, but there's plenty of other ground covers that we can use. Strawberry, of course, I talked about as one of my favorites. Wild ginger is a great one. Sorry, I have the hiccups. In shadier areas. And three-tooth cinquefoil, Sabaldiopsis tridentata. You may know that one as potentilla. Potentilla, um, that's another great one too. Oh, there's the potentilla right there. That one has very sweet little white flowers, and it is evergreen, and it is a shrub like the rabbits do enjoy it. But I found that once it's well established, so maybe protect it when it's first planted. Once it's well established, it can handle the browsing and it'll come right back up. See, so here is a photo given to me from a client. I went to visit their home, and all of that is vinca, which is devastating. Their yard is beautiful. She has beautiful sculptures everywhere, and their yard abuts conservation land, wooded land. And you can see that vinca stretches forever, and it is a thick, thick carpet. So that is the exact reason why we hear people say, oh, it's not a problem in my yard. Your yard is not the problem. It's not the concern. It's when it goes into those natural areas that's the concern. The thing that I look at when I look at these pictures is this beautiful wooded area should have things like lady slippers and trout lily and all the like bloodroot, beautiful spring ephemerals. They don't, because there's no way for those things to come up through that thick vinca. Burning bush, that is an invasive species in Massachusetts. So it is illegal to move, sell, trade, gift, these lights flashing. You can't do any of those things. So if you are like some of the people I've seen online saying that their burning bush got eaten by rabbits this winter, oh, sad. Not, it's not sad. Replace those with other very valuable plants like blueberries, wonderful vacciniums. We have high bush, low bush blueberries. Same beautiful color in the fall. You get some berries. The birds will get plenty of berries, and it's a lot healthier for our environment. Clematis is another one that's really popular. The sweet autumn clematis you see all the time. These two plants are practically identical. They're really hard to tell the difference between them. The difference is really in the leaves. The sweet autumn clematis has smoother leaves, and the native clematis has a tooth to the edge of those leaves. So the sweet autumn clematis is very aggressive, and the native one is less, still a vine, so it's still on the aggressive side, but it's less aggressive. And one of our customers said a couple of years ago, they had an amazing suggestion of letting the vine grow along the bottom of a fence. So some of it went up the fence, but a lot of it just kind of grew along the fence base, and it was gorgeous. I'm kind of stunned by that one. Uh, so that's a really great option. Almost done. A common thistle. So thistles, we're used to seeing the bull thistle and stuff, real spiky, real pokey, and they make a mess. But they're just, everything is going to be on them. Like they're just insects galore. So edible, which is wonderful. And our native thistles are not quite as pokey, still pokey, but less pokey. So they're a little bit more pleasant to have around. So if you have a little bit more space and you need something taller, some height, some visual interest, those are really, really great option to have. I missed fast, got a little distracted by the flashing lights, but there's some options for you. You didn't miss anything. You can go to our website, bluestemnatives.com. We've worked really hard to make it a resource for you. We have some what to plant lists. So this is just a small example of them. If you have maybe a hard area of your yard or you're dealing with deer or rabbits and whatnot, container growing, if you're on a patio, we have some plant lists for you to peruse. And we also sell a wide variety of books. This is a teeny tiny example. We have so many books for sale, which is really, really great. Really looking forward to getting Dr. Talamy's latest. Can't wait for that one. And yeah, that I'm looking forward to seeing if you have any questions for me.
Okay, we do have questions. The
Great.
first one is, what should you use as pesticide?
Ooh, I'd say For what? Like that would be my question. So do you have an issue with like aphids? We'll go with that. So if you have a ton of aphids on a plant, um, what we use is IPM. So you want to start with mechanical removal as much as possible. So whack them with a hose if you can. Um, if the infestation isn't that bad, give it a few days and see what happens. We have beach plum at the nursery, and the aphids love beach plum. Um, so every time I see them, I start to freak out because I'm not selling a plant with a bunch of aphids all over it. So I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm like, oh, maybe I should pull them and spray them. And the very next day, I look at them again, and there's ladybug larvae on them. I'm soft. I didn't have to do anything. So you could, hit things with the hose. You could put some gloves on, kind of give them a little squish. Um, if it's a real problem, I would really depends. It depends what the issue is. I would just be careful to read the label, follow the label. That is always the most important thing. Try your best to avoid them and don't make any homemade concoctions. That's never, ever, ever the best option.
Okay. What do you think about using micro clover instead of a grass lawn?
I think it's fine. It's not, so like I said, it's not native, but it's fine. It's a better option than just like the monoculture of the lawn, but monoculture. It's a
Okay.
one step up.
All right. Are you having issues with New Jersey tea?
New Jersey tea is she's a pretty princess. That one is very particular in its areas that it likes. Once it's well established, it's great, but doesn't like it too moist. She likes nice and dry, but she doesn't like to dry out all the way. A really well drained soil. She likes nice and sunny, and she is also a rabbit and deer favorite. Oh, getting it established would be a trick.
Okay. What can you do for spider mites?
Yeah, that's another one that can be a challenge. If they're if you can get it early and you can just kind of spritz them off the plant and help. If you really your plant is just overwhelmed with it, I would isolate that plant, throw a mesh over it, and you can use the neem oil for that sort of thing. But again, isolating, you want to take that plant out of the food chain to try to mitigate any of the detriment.
Okay. Let's see here. This one says regarding rose mallow, insects eat leaves, leaving lace network only. Suggestions on how to treat this specifically.
But take a look and see if you can identify what is eating the leaves. So the idea that the leaves are being eaten is not a concern to me. If the entire shrub is being skeletonized, obviously that's a problem. But remember that, plants are food first and foremost. There's going to be plant insects that eat the leaves, and we want that. If they're being skeletonized by a non-native insect, an invasive insect, then we can take steps. But really identifying that what's causing the problem would be the key. And if you are able to kind of take some time and maybe get some pictures of insects that are on the plant, and then check in with the county extension office. Like I know Blake Dinius is planning on Friday.
Yeah, he's up this week. I forget. Thursday, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
he's just absolutely phenomenal. He's the Plymouth County Extension entomologist, and other counties have them as well. So if you can get in contact with someone there and say, insect is destroying this plant, what do I do about it? And they are a wealth of information. They can help you out.
Okay, let's see. This is just someone asked us to please remind people that birds like bird baths with rough surfaces so they don't slide into the water and drown, and
Mhm.
insects as well.
Yeah, putting little
Um,
shallow rocks in there is really cool.
yep.
Hmm.
I have a wet area of my yard. Are there plants that tolerate a high water table?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. It depends on how much sun that areas get. I would check out the website. If you go to the tab that says buy plants, and you can go down on the left side are a bunch of filters, and you can check off the different filters for the plant, and it'll bring up all the plants that fit those filters. So you could do full sun, wet, full sun, part, average soil, or part sun and dry, all the different things, and it will help pull up all those plants. There's a lot of
And
moist
I put
soil.
your website link in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you.
I have had trouble propagating fireweed, and I
Hmm.
probably won't pronounce this right, Chimaerian
Yeah,
angustifolium,
very
and
good.
meadow beauty,
Hmm.
Rexica virginica from
Yeah,
seed. Any tips on how to succeed with these?
no. Sorry. Those two are very, very, very challenging. And that would actually be a question that I would direct to Britt because Britt is an absolute master grower. But those two in particular, we had fireweed, I want to say year one, we had a small amount of them, just brutal to grow. Out west, holy cow, they grow everywhere. Here, not so much. Those two in particular, yeah, those ones are very, very challenging. Keep at
Okay.
it.
Does Bluestem Natives offer companion plat packs of natives?
Ooh. um, No. The way we have our nursery set up is by a genus, really. So we have plants that are, lumped together. On our website, we do say, plants grow well with this or that. Really, if you're planting to the conditions, which you absolutely should, and you choose those plants that fit those conditions, they should all grow pretty well together. The only caveat I would say to that is if a plant is labeled as growing aggressively, you want to plant that with other aggressive growers so they kind of work to duke it out amongst each other. You don't want to put an aggressive grower with a non aggressive grower, it'll just take over. Oh, yeah, plant to the conditions and you will automatically find companion plants.
Okay. Are redbud trees native or at least not detrimental? I love the way they flower.
Hmm. They are technically, if we're going to go by, map lines, they're technically native south of us. However, not so far that it would be outrageous to have them. So I think they're totally fine, and we're trying to grow them ourselves. That's one of those things where we're trying to expand to more coastal areas. So I think they're fine.
Okay. I spray my holly with neem oil all summer and fall, but still get leaf drop and destruction. What can I do?
What kind of holly is it? Is the question I would ask. If it's a non native holly, then I would say replace it with a native one. But that's another
Uh,
question. I would contact the county extension. It could be something if you send in a soil sample, it could be something that has in the soil that could be a fix for it. I think there's certain things like dusting a plant with diatomaceous earth can be helpful for certain things. So it really depends on what is causing that.
Okay.
Identifying the causes.
All right. Any advice about rabbits? They eat everything now.
Mhm.
Also, is the native clematis a host plant?
It is a host plant. I don't know the number of Lepidoptera off the top of my head for the clematis, but it is. And I did recently write, well, last summer, I wrote a blog post about gardening with rabbits that I recommend if you get a chance to read. Um, In summary, plant more of everything. I know that's really rich coming from somebody who sells plants for a living, but the idea is planting intensively, planting more of things like don't have one plant, one plant, one plant, because the rabbits are going to come through and just mow it, mow it down. Each rabbit eats. roughly a pound of foliage a day. So if you think about how many plants you need to be able to kind of, you know, deal with that. So planting intensively, protecting plants when they're small, like just do it. Nobody wants to cover their whole yard in fencing. But if you're putting all this time and money into your plants, just protect them while they're establishing. Once they're bigger and a little tougher, then they'll mostly leave them alone. I've seen a lot of rabbit damage on shrubs and trees this winter because the snow was so high and the rabbits had nothing else to eat that they would come and they would girdle all the shrubs and trees. So I think that's going to be a real concern for a lot of people this winter or this spring.
The next one says, I have at least an acre of vinca in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. It's too much to pull. In this case, would glyphosate be a viable option? I don't want to negatively impact the wildlife, turkeys, moose, deer, etc.
Yeah. Um, I would check first with your county extension or your conservation commission before you use any herbicide. That's a touchy subject. I personally am not against very careful judicial use of an herbicide in areas. I like to think of, cost benefit or something like that because I do see that as being a real potential for good. If that's a large area of vinca, which is otherwise not providing any ecological value, like using an herbicide very carefully could be warranted in that area. But I would consult your conservation commission, especially if you're anywhere near natural water sources. And county extension, again, huge, huge valuable resource because they can tell you exactly what herbicide to use, the dose, when to apply it, because when is often more important than how much or what you're applying, and go from there.
Okay. Russ Cohen just made a comment. Redbud, Cercis
Canadensis.
canadensis,
Yeah.
okay, is native to New England, Southwest, and Connecticut, and that is a species on Dr. Gagir's list.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. So problems there.
So the next question is Washington Street is Route 53, right? And number 376 is near what landmark?
Oh, so Village Garden. So if you know where Village Garden is, it's that little adorable retail pavilion with uh, Torria San Pietro, which is the Italian restaurant on the corner. So if you go into that little retail area, we are in the back. Follow the little signs you'll see, and we're all the way in the back.
Okay. Can you comment on which birds, if any, will eat the cabbage moth caterpillars that feast on the leaves of our defenseless crops?
Oh, I don't know which birds. I'm sure if I had to just guess, I would say fewer birds, but I would say probably bats are more likely to eat cabbage moths. I know they're flying during the day too, but Um, if I had to guess, I would probably encourage bat if I had an issue with that. Um, Not my area of expertise on what predators would go for the cabbage moth, but it would be my guess anyway.
Okay. Can't cedar oil be used on ticks as well?
I can. It's very effective, but again, it's not something just because it's organic and it's from a plant doesn't mean it doesn't have detrimental effects because it does cause neurological issues for insects. It is a systemic pesticide for broad spectrum pesticide. Uh, so it absolutely it's very effective. It smells nice too, which is why I like to use it. So I that's why I use it very carefully, thoughtfully in my own yard. And it's the one that I recommend, but I don't recommend spraying it all over the place. Because if you're spraying it on your plants, even if it's at night when the pollinators aren't out, it doesn't matter because the larvae are eating the leaves and everything else, and they get the effects that way. So um, just be careful, cautious. Read that label is the most important piece of advice I have. Use it just in the space that you occupy.
Okay. What species are you growing in seed to increase plots, as I'm guessing what that means?
Well, for like our seed farm, maybe we have a lot. I don't. I mean, we have like a whole spreadsheet of plants that we're growing. It's just about an acre. We're at just under an acre, I think, of plants. So a lot. We have a lot of
Right.
seeds. Our goal is to grow that space more every year. We increase what we have.
Okay. How do you stop dodder?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Personally, when I see it crop up at the nursery, is I pick it off as early as possible. Early intervention is really helpful. That's not one that we tend to. We don't use a pesticide or anything on that. Using, I suppose, if it's the advice would be different for us because we are in containers. So pick it off and then we use rice hulls as a cover for the soil. So that helps to kind of mitigate it from spreading around. Yeah, trying to get it early. So keep an eye out early, like, mid to late spring for warning signs and just try and nip it in the bud.
Did we go over is native clematis a host plant? I think we
It
did. I
is,
think that was in
yeah. I
both
just
both places. For your seed, excuse me, for your seed plots, where's the original source of the seed, and do you do any wild collection?
We do. We are very, very particular about what seeds we've put into that space. We are only putting in Ecoregion 59. We have done some wild collection from very specific spaces. We've gotten permission from some conservation areas for some limited collecting. And we also have some private landowners that have given us permission to collect on their land as well. So everything that we have planted in there, we've documented the provenance. So we'll be able to say without question that everything from our seed plot is local as it gets.
Okay. How about soft landings under trees?
Yeah, soft landings refers to, if you remember that picture I showed in the Leave the Leaves slide with the different butterfly and moth species. They are building those cocoons. That's the word I was looking for earlier, cocoons. They're building those cocoons while the leaves are still up in the tree. And so the idea of not having hard surfaces underneath the trees. So letting grass, grow out, expanding flower beds, leaving leaves in piles underneath trees so that when those leaves and those cocoons fall, they're not hitting the ground. And they have space for protection from the winter, protection from predators. So the idea is to kind of expand those spaces under trees to make those soft landings.
You've gotten a lot of thank yous and great jobs. And the Higginbottoms say they can't wait to see you at the nursery. I'd like to
Same.
thank you for tonight and thank everybody for coming. And I would like to encourage everybody to come to tomorrow's Zoom, which is Next Steps for Nature with Doug Tallamy. And then please join us on Saturday at the Live Expo. And then new this year, we will have a shuttle that will be going back and forth from Kennedy's to Oro. So you can park there and catch the shuttle to Kennedy's. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Laurie.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye. Good night.